Welcome to the Tagent Podcast. Big show coming up today. We're talking about the roommates' text messages, the 911 call in the Idaho 4 case involving the 4 University of Idaho students. The defendant obviously facing the ultimate punishment in this case that will be going to trial later this year. Jury selection slated for August. So these text messages really put together a timeline. We're going to go through it today. I am Vinnie Politan. Below me, Al Wunsch III. Below him, the radio legend Jonesy. And this is the Tagent Podcast.
It's Vinnie and the Tangents, True Crime Podcast. Vinnie has the blue eyes, Al cracks the jokes. Jonesy stays behind his shades, entertaining all the folks. It's Vinnie and the Tangents, True Crime Podcast. Load up all your comments, hit those super chats. Let's go smash that like button, so we can all have a blast. Vinnie, Al, and Jonesy on the job. They're the Sugar Hill Gang of true crime. They're telling stories of days gone by. They take crime and turn into a good old time. It's Vinnie and the Tangents, True Crime Podcast.
There we go, the True Crime Podcast. Today, I believe, simulcasting on Court TV's YouTube channel. Of course, my YouTube channel. We are on Twitch. We are on X. And, of course, Mark Zuckerberg's Facebook. There you go, folks. We are everywhere. The Tagent Podcast, really a big show today that we have going on. A lot of moving parts. So we're going to get into it pretty quickly today. But I just wanted to go through a couple other little things. You may notice that we look a little different today. We've upgraded the look of the show. You know, what do you think, Jonesy? You liking the new look of the show?
What? I love being encircled.
Folks, Jonesy has not been hitting the sauce. I believe that his Wi-Fi is just a little wonky today. Jonesy, can you hear us?
Jonesy, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
All right. Excellent. There we go. We are back in business. So let's get, and for those of you who don't know the story, this is the biggest true crime story in America. This is the biggest trial that we're tracking at Court TV. Jury selection is slated for August of this year. The trial may take about 3 months. You're talking about what began as a mystery. Investigators believe they have solved it, but this defendant claims he has an alibi. He's claimed his innocence. So we're going to get into it. Now, I think the first big surprise when we were covering this story was when we found out there were surviving roommates. That 4 young people lost their lives, but there were 2 surviving roommates. And to me, that became part of the mystery here. Like, how did that happen? What happened? And, where were they? And I think the more we learned about the house, it started to make a little more sense. But that was shocking that there were, this house of absolute horror and tragedy, but there are 2 survivors.
Well, you know what, Vinny, and first of all, hola, Tangenistas, and greetings. It takes a lot. I mean, this is terrible, but it takes a lot of energy to manipulate a knife on 4 individuals and fight with 4 individuals, and then come downstairs and then you see 2 other individuals, or see that there may be 2 other individuals down there, and it takes a lot of energy. I mean, I take a look at this guy. He seems like he's got a decent build. I don't know how athletic he is, but nonetheless, it takes a lot of energy to be in that kind of a rumble. And he may just have been too tired to do anything else. Also, since this guy had some sort of a background with regards to criminology, he may have thought, listen, I've spent too much time here. I have to get out. Okay, because if you ever watch these different series and everything else, the first thing they do is they have a timed response. They always look to see their watch to say, listen, if someone called 911, it will take exactly 8 minutes and 14 seconds for the vehicle to, for a police vehicle to arrive. So he may have thought he'd been there too long and that needed to get out in order to protect himself from being stopped.
And the other part of this is we're looking the image we have up here. These are two of the victims, Kaylee and Maddie. So they're up on the top floor of the home, and I think a lot of people believe that they may very well have been the targets of the assailant. And part of the reason is when you go to the house when it used to be there, and you go behind the house. And we saw this very clearly. Chanley Painter and Cody Thomas both went out there for us. You could see their windows. If you went up in this back area, and it looks, that's the area where a car was seen going. So sort of behind the house, but the house was set on a hill. So when you went up the hill behind it, you were even with that top floor, which is where Kaylee and Maddie were. And you could tell perhaps when the light was turned off and it was time for them to go to sleep, right? Like you would have seen that the light was out. And then if you enter and through the sliding glass door, which is in the middle level, you would go through there and then upstairs. And then you'd have to come back down to that middle level, which is where Xana and Ethan lost their lives. On his way out. So it may have been a case where he only intended 2, came across 2 more on that middle floor. And then as he's leaving for the final time out of the home, that's when one of the surviving roommates says she sees him and sees a man, dressed in all black, ski mask, and notices really focusing on the eyebrow. And not even eyebrows. If you read the statements to police, she really focused on a bushy eyebrow. And that's what sort of stuck in her mind. The question is, did he see her or did she only see him? That, we don't know. We don't know the answer to that. But to me, if he doesn't see her, that could explain how she survived. But if he did see her, I think Al's explanation makes a lot of sense, Jonesy.
Yeah. Who's to say, what was going on in this fellow's mind at that point? But I think the best point you made, Al, I think the time frame. You want to get out. How long can you stay?
Well, but also, like I said, it's not like you're shooting someone. I mean, a knife situation is very personal. It is requiring a significant amount of strength, and from the fact that there is DNA in the fingernails of one of the victims, that so they fight back, and they may have fought back. One of the victims was a male that may have fought back. So, it takes a lot out of you when you physically to do that type of a thing 4 times. And, it's thank God for those, that those 2 were spared. I mean, we're happy to have that. And that's a nice note in a horrible situation that at least 2 people survived. But it's I can't imagine for the life of me, after taking down 4 people, you'd have the energy to be able to take down another 2 and still get out before any authorities arrive or anything along those lines.
So I want to start going through a little bit of the timeline that was revealed in a filing.
The adrenaline had to be through the roof.
Yeah. A filing by prosecutors where they are going to try to get certain information into the case. And it's exceptions. We could sit here and spend the next hour talking about the rules of evidence, but I think we want to get into the timeline itself, and maybe in another podcast we'll talk about the legal rules and how you can get this sort of evidence in. But the headline is that we're really seeing this stuff for the first time. So in the case at bar, starting on November 13th at 2:10 and 29 DM, which is the surviving roommate Dylan, text message to EG, the Uber driver, to inquire if he is driving. The state submits this text message is not hearsay because it will not be offered for the truth of the matter asserted. Instead, it will be offered to show a timeline of the night. So DM, who is this surviving roommate, who is the one who saw the bushy eyebrow, was awake and texting at 2:10 from 4:19 to 4:21. DM attempts to call BF, who is the other surviving roommate, Bethany, Xana, Kaylee, and Madison. All calls unanswered. Okay, 4:19 to 4:21, she's making these calls. And this apparently, I guess, is after seeing what she saw, which was this man dressed in black. The records of these calls are not hearsays. They do not meet the definition of statement, oral assertion, written assertion, or nonverbal conduct intended as an assertion. So let's put that legal stuff aside for a moment, but let's talk about what's happening now. So it looks like her first reaction after seeing this is attempting to call her roommate Bethany, who is downstairs, Xana, who is on the same floor as her, and Kaylee and Madison, who are on the top floor. So it seemed like she did react to what was happening, to what she saw. She didn't just blow it off as, oh, I don't know what this is. Like, there's a feeling that there's something is happening here.
But she didn't go far enough, unfortunately. I mean, the far enough stage would have been, I'd call 911, just, do it and go from there. She's trying to rationalize or try to, figure out whether or not indeed that's what she saw. I mean, I know that there's questions about there was partying and alcohol and things along those lines. And, she did throw something out there, but didn't go quite far enough, unfortunately.
And it's also 4:00 in the morning. Okay. The closest that I have for an experience like this is there have been a few times in the course of my life with diabetes where I've woken up in the middle of the night with an extreme low blood sugar, right? And when that happens, as you both know, and I think most of the audience knows, I don't drink, I don't do drugs. So I've never been high. I've never been drunk. So I don't know what that does to you. But I do know that my mind gets altered with a low blood sugar. Things aren't making sense. And when I woke up in the middle of the night with that low blood sugar, it was difficult for me to distinguish between reality and a dream, because there would be an intense dream that would sort of wake me up. But I'm telling you, it was a very strange experience where I couldn't tell what was real and what was a dream until perhaps the next day when I had a moment, feeling perfectly fine to reflect on it. But in the moment, I couldn't tell what was what. And I've got to imagine that's kind of what's going on here, because she's, this is 4:00 in the morning.
But that's even the more particularly odd part of this. 4:00 in the morning, there's someone in the house you don't know. Your roommates, okay, their peccadillos, what they do, the things along those lines. And there's somebody in the house that you don't recognize. And there's somebody in the house that's dressed in black. And there's someone in the house that's got a mask on. To not go to the next step is, it's a tragedy that's not what happened. I don't fault her. I mean, because, there, but for the grace of God, who knows how you react in that situation. And it's just that, it's something that should be instilled in kids forever. Just listen, when in doubt, call it out, do the 911 and just, then the cops come. What's the worst thing that can happen? The cops come and they get, oh, okay, it was a false alarm. But you know what? Better that than what happened here. So
it wouldn't have prevented anything that happened.
But you know what though, Vin? It would have perhaps got him caught. It would have perhaps got him within the vicinity of the area. It wouldn't have taken as long to identify him. I mean, you're talking about an area that is going to
be not like he's on his way out. I mean,
Yeah,
it'll take him a minute. It'll take him a minute to get to his car, and then it'll take another 45 seconds to get out of Dodge.
And if you get an all points bulletin that goes out, okay, to be on the lookout. Be on the lookout.
You don't know the kind of car at that moment. You don't know. It
doesn't matter. You're going to stop every vehicle in the vicinity. Okay, they're going to stop every vehicle in the vicinity. All right, it's any type of a situation. We've had 4 individuals red-rummed. A person is taken off. We don't know in what direction. You're going to be able to close off roads. You're going to be able to set up, a situation where you can have vehicles come by and you can inspect the vehicles. So, I mean, it would have happened, and they would have done a 15 miles probably out from the scene, and then work their way in. I mean,
they ended up catching him anyway. They ended up catching him anyway. I mean,
but they would have caught him sooner, and it certainly would have left. See, the problem is now, Vin, what we have in this world is that everybody doubts everything. So everything is a conspiracy in this world. Okay, there's no such thing as. I mean, there's a special on tonight regarding Manson on Netflix. Okay, as to whether or not it was really him doing this, or was it the government that was putting these ideas into his head because they needed to, figure out how to do mind control with people and things like. I mean, so there is a conspiracy for everything nowadays, and in a case that should have been clear cut, this is the guy who done it. If they had caught him within the vicinity of that at that evening, there'd be no doubt. Now,
I still think it's an extremely strong case. Oh, check this out from the Glarer.
Oh,
okay, Vinny, I'm not going to hold you to saying Karen Reed is innocent, but at least admit she's being railroaded. I know you want to, and I know you know it. But Glarer, I've been saying this out loud when it comes to the legal, the way this thing has proceeded legally. And I spoke with the juror last night on my show on Court TV. It is clear to me that in this retrial, she should be being tried for count 2 and count 2 only. I am shocked that the state of Massachusetts has no interest in the double jeopardy aspects of this. Maybe the federal judge will. But yeah, I agree, Glarer, that at this point, this is a failure of the system. The juror told me firsthand that they did not understand it. And there was actual discussion within the jury room about whether or not they could. And the majority of them outnumbered the minority of them. So they did not end up, they got it wrong. They got it wrong. And why should a jury get procedure and instructions wrong? Right? The verdict they figure out, but the procedures and instructions is what they got wrong in that case. And as a result, you've got someone who has to defend herself twice on red rum charges, which to me is outrageous. So Glarer, is that enough for Glarer? I think that should be enough. No comment from Al, because that's going to take us out on a whole nother show.
Show, exactly. And and I've been working on the railroad.
All right, let's continue on the timeline here. So here they're establishing.
Hey, you can carry a tune.
Okay, now we move to the 4 a.m. hour. So within this 4 a.m. hour, this is what everyone is talking about here. These are the text messages from 422 to 424 from the one surviving roommate to the other, back and forth. Again, Dylan on the middle floor, Bethany on the bottom floor. And Dylan writes, no one is answering. I'm really confused. Then she sends one to her friend Kaylee, who's up on the third floor, one of the victims. Kaylee, what's going on? Then Bethany to Dylan, dude, WTF. And then Bethany to Dylan, Xana was wearing all black. Dylan to Bethany, I'm freaking out. Then Dylan to Bethany, no, it's like a ski mask almost. Then Bethany, STFU. Bethany, actually. And then, so I guess there must have been more of a conversation before this, because it looks like Bethany is confused about who was wearing all black. And now Dylan's saying like he had something over his head and a little mouth. BF, I'm not kidding. I'm so freaked out. And then Bethany, so am I. So it appears that she's extremely freaked out speaking with her friend, like there's something going wrong. But then Dylan says, my phone is going to die. And Bethany says, come to my room, run down here. So at this moment, it's clear, I think, that both realize that something very, very strange is going on.
Right. No doubt about it. You know, so I'm looking at some of the comments, and then they're saying, well, you know, maybe they were intoxicated, so they were afraid to call the police. You know, that's not an excuse. First of all, there's no law against you being drunk in your house. The law is buying the alcohol or being served the alcohol, you know, at a bar or something along those lines. If there's alcohol in your house and you're drinking, the police are not going to arrest you for being intoxicated in your own house. If you get into a car, that's a different story. The other thing is that, you know, and in New Jersey, we have, you know, a law that, you know, even if the person is OD'd, okay, and you call and you say, listen, this, you know, I think they've OD'd, as long as you stay there, when the police are there, when they arrive and the EMTs arrive and everything else, they can't arrest you for the possession of any type of CDS. There could be a mountain of cocaine on a kitchen table. You're not going to be arrested for it, okay? Because the key is you want to get that person help. If you call and then you leave, then you could be arrested. But if you stay there and wait for the police to come and everything along those lines, they're not going to arrest you. So I got to imagine it's got to be somewhat similar with regards to out there, okay, in Idaho. And what I'm saying is that you have a scenario where if they're drunk, the police are not going to be making a big deal out of this.
Yeah. Now, and it's a college campus. Like it seems like yesterday, but it wasn't that long ago. I went to college, and there was a lot of
Connecticut, right?
In my freshman dorm.
It was
in my freshman dorm. What's that?
Connecticut, right? That's Stanford.
No, Stanford University, Palo Alto, California.
Oh, that
Maybe
one.
you've heard of it. Jones, have you heard of it?
Well, the drinking age. Oh, yes, I have indeed heard of it. The drinking age was also younger back then, as far as the freshman imbibing is concerned.
Not when I was there.
You know, people can no. Okay, so yeah, that's right. I just squeaked through, and I'm a few years older than you. I just squeaked through on the younger drinking age in the state of New Jersey. I was 18, and they grandfathered it in. Well, they grandfathered it in. You know, when you were 18, they changed the law every year to 19, 20, and then 21. But if you had already turned 18, you retained the you know, the ability to purchase alcohol. But that, you know, that's beside the point. It's easy to say what you would do in situations like this, and I often hate it because people have said it to me when I was a victim of a mugging. You know, well, this is what I would do, Jones. I would take out the first guy and take his weapon away. You know, people say stuff like that, and so I'm not fond of that. But you know, in that situation, I would call 911 out of fear,
right?
Not only to protect my friends, but to protect
the unknown.
myself.
I
would have been scared.
Yeah, and that's because it's obvious that they're like, she definitely knows something is not right here. Not sure what it is, and then Bethany says, "Run." Like, run down here. So she goes down there, and they sort of, I guess, huddle together downstairs. And I think this was the confusing part initially when the story broke, which was the time of the attack and then the time that 911 was finally called, which was much, much later in the day. Here's Mallory Beavers. Thank you so much, Mallory. It's very hard to understand the lapse in judgment regarding 911, but try and remember the girls were intoxicated. It's a party house, lots of people in and out. Her brain trying to make sense of what she saw and doesn't assume the worst. Now, the other thing you need to know about this particular area is that it's extremely safe. Like this is like a place where I think people wouldn't even lock their doors, like people who live in that area. And this is one of the reasons I remember hearing one of the parents of the victim saying this is one of the reasons they chose this school, because he felt it was in a very safe place. So I think like no place is safe 100%, obviously, but you do get sort of a sense in certain places that, hey, I feel safe here. And you're not going to assume that something like this happened. But it's clear from her own words, though, that she's wondering, she's grappling with it and is trying very hard to make sense of it. Thanks so much, Mallory.
And that's the point. The point is that, and look, I'm not in any way, following up on what Jonesy said about, being the Monday morning quarterback and saying this is what you were going to do. I'm simply stating now that if you're a parent and you have kids in college and you've got, any type of situation, you sit them down and you say, listen, when in doubt, call it out, call 911. Okay. Learn the rules with regards to if, God forbid, somebody ODs, what needs to be done to protect you. Okay, so I'm only bringing that up from the standpoint of that this is what we should be telling our kids. I have a daughter in college, and I've told her that if she is not comfortable in a situation, if she sees somebody that's out of the ordinary, and they've got pretty good security at the school she goes to, call. There is no problem. There's nothing that can be done to you if you're calling. Okay, other than the fact that the police may get annoyed that there was nothing there. But you know what? It's better than what happened here. So that my point is simply this. I'm not Monday morning quarterbacking those poor girls. It's a nightmare. They're going to be living that with those two survivors are going to be living with that for the rest of their lives. But you folks out there, talk to your kids. Tell them that this is what you should be doing. Rather than getting into a situation where you're texting. As soon as they started texting, as soon as they called, and no one answered upstairs, 911 should have been called immediately.
Right. To me, that's the test, right? Like if you're concerned enough that you're having this conversation, then make the call. It's kind of like, as an analogy, when we are talking, when we're putting together the show every night and we're like, should we play this video? And then, because there might be something that's like a little bit over the top about it. And then my rule always is, if we're having the discussion about whether or not we should show it, then we shouldn't show it. Right? To me, that's like we're already hesitating about whether or not this video is too gory or whatever it is, whatever the issue is with it. And if we're having that discussion, I think we know the answer already. And I think, Al, that's exactly what you're saying. And that's what the rule should be. If you're having the discussion and you're wondering, then you should. Because there's because you look at the two sides. Like if I show a video that's over the top, it's going to be.
I'm sorry, Jonesy,
you're up.
I thought I froze. I lost that thought because okay. From a viewer's standpoint. I want to see the stuff that you deem is not appropriate. I want to see it all. When I watch like car chases with police live on TV with helicopters chasing them, they always say like, if anything horrible happens, we'll turn away. And I'm like, well, then what's the payoff here? I want to see how this comes to a conclusion. So I'm not the average viewer, but I want to see it all.
Yeah. I get it. And I guess it depends where the line is. Like we have a line, like I have a line, we have a line. I have a line here on YouTube as well. Like
it's called standards and practices.
Right. There are certain standards so that's the downside. If you cross that line, you haven't done the right thing. And there's different circumstances that I kind of use that test. But, for here, I think that's kind of what, unfortunately, the girls were grappling with. Spruced and Gussied. I love that name on YouTube. So did DM actually make it down to BF's room? Yes. Yes. That's where she ends up sleeping. Spruced and Gussied. When was the last time you got all gussied up, Jonesy?
Just a few weeks ago when I did a live stage show with 3 outfit changes, got all gussied up for that particular one. I used to get gussied up all the time. And one of my great regrets lately is I find myself not always looking my best. You should always look your best.
Yeah.
Well, the yeah, it is just so troubling to me though that that the girls went to sleep. You know, didn't go forward a little bit more, didn't push the envelope.
I don't know how they did.
And I mean, it's like everything you see in these horrendous slasher films, where you could go to the closet and you've got a grenade launcher, you've got a shotgun, you've got pistols, you've got knives, you got this. I'll just take this flashlight, okay, and then I'll just start walking backwards in the house. I mean, why wouldn't someone at that stage have, as soon as your friends don't answer upstairs, the call needs to be made? Because there's something going on there. There's something wrong. They're not answering the text messages. They're not answering the phone. And it's so odd for kids to be using the phone anyway at that generation. Everything is text. Very, very few times do you get phone calls. So when the phone call goes through and no one answers, you got to make that call. 911, very simple. And then you let, the chips fall where they may. And you're right, it would not have saved them, but it may have got him, may have had him caught sooner and would have been more of in a proximity and less of this conspiracy theory stuff that we're seeming to find now in just about every case.
4:24 a.m. DM Dylan calls Ethan, one of the victims. Obviously it goes unanswered. Then Dylan and Bethany continue to text at 4:24. DM texts Bethany, I don't know what she's saying there, though. And BF responds, yeah, I think that's I know, but it's better than being alone. So here again, at least you're not alone. I'm here. And we'll be okay. 4:27, there is a call to Kaylee Goncalves, unanswered. At 4:28, she calls Xana. It's unanswered. Then sends a text message to Kaylee, please answer. So, and that's at 4:32. So it's continuing that she knows something is wrong. No one is responding. I mean, I don't know if they sleep with their phones on or off. Mine is totally off, so you're never going to be able to wake me up with a text message in the middle of the night. But no one's answering, no one's responding. And I don't know if they normally would at 4:30 in the morning. But this is what's telling to me, right? They're all in the same house.
Right.
She's scared. She's not going to see them or find them, right? Like if you're very concerned, please answer. You could walk out of your room, go upstairs to see Maddie and Kaylee, or go across the hallway to see if Xana is there. But she doesn't do that. So that tells me there is a level of fear here.
Shows just how scared she is.
And I'm seeing a lot of comments that hindsight's 2020 and all this other kind of stuff. I am not in any way criticizing what these two girls.
Al, why are you always saying things and you got people attacking you every week?
I know. That's because
out there, Joe's every week.
See, the nice thing is that, we are and happy Lent, everyone. We're in the season of Lent, and I gave up aggravation for Lent. So I don't speak to my family. So now I'm not going to speak to any of you people that are putting nasty comments out on me on this whole thing. So I've given up that for Lent. But what I want to just say is this. I am not criticizing these two girls, not at all. I don't in any way think that, that they knew what was happening or anything along those lines. I am saying for the people who are watching, the people who are listening, the people that are Tandanistas, speak to your kids and tell them, when in doubt, call it out. That's the only thing I'm asking for, is just let them know it's not a sin to call 911 if you're concerned. And it's better safe than sorry. And that's all I'm looking to do. All I want is that. And then, God forbid, with regards to the overdose, same thing. Don't panic. Call 911. Let them come. Stay there. I don't care if there's a mountain on the table. The cops can't arrest you for that. All right. They're going to confiscate it, of course, but I mean, they're not going to arrest you for it. You just have to do that. I know from a family situation of what happens if you don't do it the right way. It's a terrible.
Then you got to call Uncle Al to come down and bail you out. That's what happens. So let's look at this. This is fascinating, and thank you so much, Larissa. Larissa Harris. A lot of holes in the state's case, not to mention lies from prosecutors and law enforcement. I thought guilt, sheath all they have, but no work to show. S.Y. Ray will destroy the car evidence. Well, the sheath is the foundation of the case. The knife sheath is found upstairs beneath the body of one of the victims. And on the little snap on the knife sheath is the DNA that they say matches the suspect, the defendant. They have to explain it. How do you explain that? There is no explanation other than I sold the knife sheath, someone stole my knife sheath, or I lent it to my homicidal friend. Like there's no, how else does his DNA get there unless you're going to try to pull like maybe Mark Furman came down and planted it there. The problem with planting evidence in this case, the problem with planting evidence in this case is there was no suspect before the evidence was found or examined. Right. OJ was being investigated right out of the box. Right. So he was obviously on the radar. Right. This guy, nobody knows. The only way they know him is because of the DNA. So it's not like they make an arrest. They have a suspect. Let's get his DNA. Let's put it on a piece of evidence. No, it's the DNA that leads them to him. So that's why I think that piece of evidence alone is enough here.
It's pretty good. I mean, it's certainly and clearly there's other stuff that that we may not know about at this stage of the game. I mean, you have to be pretty sure to be able to put the cuffs on this guy in something this big, and I think they have a strong case. And that sheath is a huge part of that puzzle.
I do want to know more about the extraneous blood that was found. The blood that wasn't traced to anybody in the house or to him. That doesn't take away from the fact that he got this DNA on the sheath. But it does beg a lot of questions. As far as the comment about prosecution has a lot of holes in the case, I don't really see that. Do you guys?
No, I don't. But they defense attorneys, and these are very thorough defense attorneys, and they're going to hire very good experts. They will attempt to, but the bottom line is he's alleging a sort of a general alibi, which really doesn't work. His phone gets turned off at some point during the night at the time in question. He's driving around that night. He drives by the crime scene the following morning. I mean, the things they don't have the weapon. They don't have an eyewitness who can identify him. They don't have a videotape of it, and they don't have a confession. But, the DNA is one piece of circumstantial evidence that is extremely compelling. By the way, thank you. We've got over 3,000 live viewers right now. Thank you so much. Live streaming on my Facebook, my YouTube, my Twitch, my X, and the Court TV YouTube on the simulcast today. So hello to all the folks watching over there. You want to follow me on my YouTube channel, Vinnie Politan 1. Vinnie Politan 1 is my, what do they call it, handle or would you? By the way, I have to put another. Where'd it go? These things
Viva la Tangenistas.
The Tangenista. Here we go. Gen X, one of our mods, reminding: be kind to Al. No need to put everything he says into the worst possible context. Probably just about 75%. But Gen X, of course, part of our mod squad.
Order in the chat. Order in the chat. Don't dare attack. We've got order in this chat.
I guess we don't have order in that song.
I don't know what's happening. We've got some issues here. We've got some serious issues with,
Houston, we have a problem.
Let's see if it works now. No, I must have bad internet today or something. I don't know.
Well, we changed up things today. That's probably you know what? You got these kinks when.
See, I've had a.
Jonesy's just going.
Jonesy's struggling today because
I've had a lot of issues, and I just assumed it's me. I have a lot of issues. Also, when I do make a comment and you can hear me, I notice a long delay before there's a reply. So I think I'm in a delay of some sort.
Yes.
Lots of internet problems here today, but that's beside the point.
I'm going to suggest that you do sign language, and I will then speak those words. I will transcribe the words for you. Okay, I'll translate.
So this now is in the 10 a.m. hour. So this is the following morning, I guess, when she's waking up. To Kaylee, please answer. To Maddie, are you up? Back to Kaylee, are you up? So there's the gap, right? So we go from 4:30 or so to about 10 o'clock the following morning, and still no response, no reply. I think she's scared to see. I think there's a suspicion that something was terribly wrong, and she was almost afraid to acknowledge or confront it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to acknowledge that that something bad could have really happened. Like if I kind of push it down, it's not going to be real. Like, this won't be real. If I don't actually see it, it won't be real. And I think that might be part of the space that she's in at this moment.
And that is perfectly understandable. But why don't you go upstairs? I mean, the first thing that you do is you walk. It's your house. Okay, so it's not like that you have to go inside someplace you've never been before. It's not your house or whatever. It's your house. Walk upstairs. Knock on the door. What's going on? Hey, you guys up? Geez, there was something weird last night.
She's scared. She is scared.
So then that's my point. My point is, if you're scared, then something should have been done rather than waiting. Okay, something should have been done at that point.
Order in the chat. Order in the chat. Don't dare attack. We've got order in this
song.
Chat. The Mod Squad is on the job, helping us to keep it clean. The Mod Squad is on the job. Oh.
It's just not working. It's not even showing up. We're in a strange place, folks. Strange place. And I think what's happened is the software we use has changed so many things that there's a lot of bugs that need to be worked out. But
is there anybody out there?
So we'll stick with what's working. So the 911 call is finally made.
What, 11?
Around 11, yeah. I have the transcript. I'll do a quick reading of the transcript here for you.
Thank you.
And what's the number you're calling from? What's your phone number? And then they answer, what's the rest? It's redacted. Okay, tell me exactly what's going on. One of the roommates who's passed out, and she was drunk last night, and she's not waking up.
Okay.
This is interesting, right? Because I don't think they don't see any of the red stuff that would be coming out of someone.
Right. Which is, I mean, now that could be that maybe they're covered up with blankets, okay, and you would not see anything on there, especially depending on where the person is laying down, the red stuff could have been seeping into the mattress as opposed to being expressed on the sheets. So that's certainly plausible that could be the situation. But did no one went any further? They probably looked in, made some wake up, hey, you up, and they're not moving. So then they make the 911 call.
And there's a third party who's making this call. It's not the roommates aren't making the call, because you'll hear in this next part. No, we saw. Okay. Oh, and they saw some man in their house last night.
Bingo.
So now they're putting the pieces together. Now I think they know for sure, but okay. Now they ask, are you with the patient? I need someone to keep the phone, stop passing it around. So I guess there's a bunch of scared kids that are passing the phone around, totally freaking out, in a total panic, not knowing what to do. And are you with the patient? I need someone to keep the phone. Can I just tell you what happened pretty much? What is going on currently? Is someone passed out right now? I don't really know, but pretty much at 4 a.m. Okay, I need to know what's going on right now. If someone is passed out, can you find that out? Yeah, I'll come on. We got to check, but we have to. Is she passed out? She's passed out. What's wrong? And then they dispatch the Moscow ambulance. She's not waking up. And then a couple more things. They get people on the way. They give the address. I'm trying to see if there's anything else. They're giving her age. She's 20. And I think this is all Xana. This is Xana who's on that middle floor.
Right.
Is she breathing? Is she breathing? And they're just saying, no, hello. I need you to talk to them. Okay, hello. I've already sent the ambulance. Is there a defibrillator available? I need someone. Units responding. The patient is not conscious, not breathing. And I guess they're talking to each other. And then the operator says, I think we have a homicide. So the real big lines are right there in the beginning, where acknowledgement of the man. They think that something else may have happened to her. She may have passed out from drinking, right? So, and here's the other thing. Like, if your friend is, like you were saying, Al, if your friend is drinking, call 911. If anyone's passed out at any moment, you call 911.
Exactly.
Because you don't know what's going on.
Exactly.
It's how you can kind of keep watch each other's back. We've got more from Larissa Harris. I put a Linda Lane video in the chat. Not everyone has seen. Different than video that shows supposed Elantra guy walks up to dumpster and throws stuff out, waits to get picked up, curious about opinion. Interesting. We will take a look at that. That's a different Linda Lane video. Interesting. Shows supposed Elantra guy walks up to dumpster, throws stuff out, waits to get picked up, curious about opinion. That's fascinating, because they haven't found clothes. They haven't found a weapon.
But that they would have been checking that dumpster, or they would have been checking the area where that dumpster would have been dumped. Okay, so I mean, that obviously would have been done.
Obviously?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's it.
No.
What ends up happening is this. So, like,
I don't know. I've covered too many of these cases, Al. I don't think anything is obvious here. I think they did a great job in this investigation, but I don't presume that anything and everything was done. And it would also, I'd have to see exactly where on Linda Lane this is. Green Wool Witch. Hi, fellas. That poor child was just too terrified to act. Logic goes out the window with some folks when they're scared. Love all you guys. Fear puts us in a whole different place.
Fear strikes out. The Jimmy Pearsall story.
Yeah.
What's the most scared you ever were, Jonesy?
Well, there's a couple. I was mugged on the beach and beaten with the blunt end of some sort of weapon about the head. I could still feel the pain when it rains. But in between industry jobs, I worked as a janitor in my hometown at the school. and I went into the stage area, where they would do the performances, and the teacher's office was off to the left. And I went in, and my way of cleaning the place was to leave all the lights out, dump the garbage, and get the hell out of there. There was a strange smell, an aroma in the room, and I looked behind the door. Between the crack of the door, I could see eyes looking out at me. I assume you guys can still hear me?
Yeah. We can hear you.
We're mesmerized.
Okay, so yeah, again, there seems to be some sort of delay. So there were eyes looking out at me, and the reason there was an aroma is because I believe the guy was probably homeless.
What?
He was looking for a place to stay for the night, I think. Wanted to scream in a very, very loud, manly, deep voice for him to get out, and nothing came out. It came out in like a high-pitched falsetto. And yeah, so like, we're both walking towards the doors, which are chained locked from the inside, because that's one of the first things you do in your duties. And so I have to unlock it to get him out. And I start wielding, the chain, and scream for him to get out. And he just kept saying stay calm, stay calm. And he ran away. He was obviously a homeless guy just looking for a place to crash for the night. I happened in on him. There was no harm. I did not call the police because I felt as though this gentleman has enough problems as it is. But that was probably the most scared I ever was.
We've got a lot of comments starting to pop up here, so I just want to work through a few of them. And I had an interesting one here. Here we go from Ayantu. Larissa is right. Considering the science, BK didn't have to touch the sheath. There's plenty of research on how easily transferable trace DNA is. Okay, but it's got to be transferred. So something has to come in contact with the suspect, get his DNA, and then get it on the sheath. So what's the explanation there? Is it transferred from where to where? And I think, prosecutors proved the case beyond a reasonable doubt. But I think once the prosecutors put out that the DNA is there, then I think it's going to be incumbent upon the defense to come up with some reasonable alternative explanation as to how the DNA got there. You can say transfer, and it's a real deal. I agree, Ayantu, 100% that transfer DNA is real, and they can pick up it's amazing what they can pick up. But the transfer has to be transferred. So someone has to come in contact with him to transfer it there. Who, when, what, when, and how. I think if the defense wants to win that issue, they need to produce that evidence, which at this point I don't think does exist. But thank you so much, Yantu. I want to get to a couple more. I don't want to run out of time here.
Well, Ben, you know what? As history has told us, okay, generally with regards to these kind of cases, all right, the first suspect is usually the strongest suspect. So
Civil War to civil rights and all the revolution fights, World War I and World War II, I'll always knows who is who. It's this day in history, this day in history, history. Now let's listen to his story.
Before we get to this day in history, Al, Justice Junkie, I'll never understand why an attorney would defend a monster like BK, defense attorney not. How do they sleep at night? Daybell's attorneys as well. Do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'll take that one. Okay.
Somebody's got to do it.
First of all, it's the cornerstone of the American jurisprudential system. Second of all, okay, there's probably was no greater patriot in the world than John Adams with regards to how he was steering this country to break free from England and all of the things that were going on with regards to same. And then in the Boston Massacre, John Adams defended the British soldiers who opened fire on a crowd of people in the Boston Square. Okay, he defended them. And when they asked, you're such a patriot, why would you do that? He goes, because they deserve to have the best defense. That's the cornerstone of our system, and we do it. Okay, and that's why I've represented monsters, and I've represented a lot of innocent people. And you've got to go forward and do it, because that's what you'd want if you were in that position. And why do I feel like James Bond with this?
Exactly. One more note we have to get to. Johnny Knoxville. Vinnie is a true crime legend. Love Vinnie shows. Thanks, Johnny.
Oh, that's exciting. All right. So now today, March 7th. Okay. March 7th in 1876, our country's centennial. Okay. Alexander Graham Bell patented the telephone. 1876. And that's right, Ben. They patented the telephone. In my house, we celebrate Alexander Graham Belkowski, who is better known as the first telephone pole. So that's how we go on that. Also on this day in history, March 7th, 1965, Bloody Sunday. State troopers used nightsticks, tear gas to attack civil rights activists as they crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, on the way to Montgomery. It was a horrendous thing where you saw them beating women, children, and men with regards to the fact that they were trying to get voting rights acts to be passed in this country. The bridge, interestingly enough, the Edmund Pettus Bridge, was named after a Confederate brigadier general, who was also a U.S. senator and a grand dragon of the KKK. In order to counter this march, the county sheriff, Jim Clark, had issued an order for all white men in Dallas County over the age of 21 to report to the courthouse to be deputized. And then he turned them loose on these peaceful marchers who were coming across the bridge. And very, very sad part of history. But a lot came from that, because that was the impetus to get the Voting Rights Act in by Lyndon Baines Johnson. On the true crime front, on this day in 1981, Randall Woodfield was arrested. Randall Woodfield was a former professional football player. He had been drafted by the Packers, and he was basically an individual who is responsible for 44 red rums and 60 essays in his history. He is sitting in jail, sentenced to life plus 90 years. And the interesting thing about this aspect, other than the fact that this guy was a former pro football player, although he was cut by Green Bay, but he was drafted by Green Bay, is that most of his things were up in Oregon and Washington, where he was committing his crimes. And he was prosecuted by Chris Van Dyke, the son of Dick Van Dyke.
Wow.
That's awesome.
I thought that was interesting. So Randall Woodfield arrested on that day, and and during his prison stay, Vin, and he's still alive, he's been married 3 times and divorced twice.
Dick Van Dyke's son?
I'm sorry?
Dick Van Dyke's son has been married?
The serial red rummer.
As soon as you mentioned Dick Van Dyke, that's all I can think about. I love that guy.
Gotta love Dick Van Dyke, who's still alive, by the way, still dancing and still has all of his wits.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Dr. Von Decay, laws vary by state. Should they call? Look at Ricky Davis in Delphi. In his home, called cops, 50 years, including enhancement. They were told by cops if they had to come back, somebody would be arrested.
I can't speak on that because I don't know the facts on it, but I can tell you this, that's not what's happening in New Jersey. Okay.
If I got to come back here, somebody's getting arrested. You know, the cops always say that on TV.
Well, that's that's very accurate. They do say that on TV, but I'm telling you right now that under the circumstances, better safe than sorry. And I would be telling my kids, and I have told my kids, you call, okay? You don't be a hero. I wouldn't even have explored. I mean, the thought about going upstairs, if I'm that scared and I'm not going to go upstairs, then I'm definitely calling, because there's something wrong, and you have an innate sense when there's something not right.
Yeah.
And that's what you exercise.
Chad Bradford, Vinny, you are presuming Bryan is guilty. If you remove the touch DNA, there's absolutely nothing connecting him to the crime. He didn't do it.
That we
Open
know
your
of.
eyes a little bit. Well, you're taking out the biggest piece of evidence. I could do that in any case.
Well, you can't dismiss the DNA.
You can't remove the
Right.
DNA from the sheath. Like, you can't.
And Vin, if no one was killed, he didn't do it.
Right. Like, you can't. And this was the problem with the Making a Red Rummer documentary, when they presented that to the public and tried to make it look like the guy was being falsely prosecuted or was falsely convicted for a second time, because he was falsely convicted a first time. In the documentary, they left out the most incriminating evidence against him. They left it out of the documentary. Like, they didn't mention it. Like, you can't not mention, like, evidence is the evidence, whatever it is or isn't, it is. So if there is DNA, it's there. So now it's incumbent upon the accused to come up with some innocent explanation, because once you put that at the scene beneath the body of the victim on something that was holding the weapon that was used, like, that is great evidence. That is better than an eyewitness. Better than an eyewitness.
And you're also neglecting to mention the other stuff they have. Okay, there is other stuff. There's a shopping list. There's this, there's that. There is a lot of things here that people conveniently seem to gloss over and say, well, you take this out and you've got nothing. Right. Well, you're right. You take out the DNA, you've got a harder case. But it doesn't necessarily mean you have nothing. And I'm sure we're only seeing a small part of the evidence that's actually out there. Okay. And just like, you look at a situation where they're going to be leaving stuff out. And look, this timeline that came up, everything is now coming into place. And it's going to be a very strong case when it comes to trial in August, if it goes to trial. Because right now, when they're starting to talk about him being on the spectrum and things along those lines, they're hoping that the deep end is going to be taken off the table.
It won't.
And
not in Idaho. Not in Idaho. We're not. No, we're not. Yeah, you could try to sell that. We ain't buying that in Idaho. Gringa, how does other DNA matter if no evidence points to someone else committing the crime? Well, in two ways it matters. In one way it matters, one way it doesn't matter. I think in one way it matters is that during the course of the trial, every little piece of evidence becomes much bigger, and attorneys make it much bigger. He's going to have a vigorous defense that will make that DNA seem like it's very, very important. It will be incumbent upon prosecutors to explain why it isn't, because it's there. And I think prosecutors, it puts an additional burden on prosecutors to not only prove their case, but to have a reasonable explanation for unknown male DNA on the rail inside the house, on some glove outside of the house, and perhaps in the fingernails of one of the victims. So all of that needs to have an explanation, and you need an expert to tell you where it could come from. You'll need fact witnesses to talk about what was going on in that house, how many people in and out, etc. But at the end of the day, if there's nothing else that can connect that DNA to a person or to someone in this crime, it shouldn't be a problem for you, because you should be relying upon the truth of what you believe the evidence proves. And the most compelling DNA is the DNA that is found beneath the victims, that clearly was not placed there by the victims, right? I mean, the victims, you can't get around what happened to the victims, where they were, and this was found beneath them. Like, a jury is allowed to use common sense and put two and two together. Someone is victimized by a knife, and there is a sheath found beneath the victims after that's happened to them, yeah, that's a very easy it's a very easy scenario to put together through circumstantial evidence. By the way, it's really interesting to see the growth of, and you were right, Al, of people who are questioning the evidence in this case, because we're seeing it.
It is now. And
you should be skeptical. Everybody should be skeptical because the burden's on prosecutors. But like, I find this particular piece of evidence compelling.
But you're going to find now that everybody has a conspiracy theory on everything. And then you see people countering it and saying, well, wait a minute, you have it. This guy is is he a spree, guy, or is he a serial red rummer? Well, if he's a serial red rummer, okay, there hasn't been any others cases going on. So it stopped when they grabbed this guy. So it's an interesting point on that too. I've seen, someone mentioning, well, there hasn't been any other cases like that going on in the area. Yeah, you're right. And serial red rummers don't stop, and they want credit for what they're doing. They don't want someone else getting the credit for what they did. So there's a lot of, I think this case is a lot stronger than people want to give it credit for. And I think that everyone is going to be throwing, anything against the wall to see if it sticks, because we like conspiracies. We like to have the opposite view of what went on. No one likes to say it's 100% sure. Everybody likes to say, well, we're not that sure.
Larissa Harris is back. Innocent until proven guilty doesn't exist. Well, it does exist. It exists in every case, in every trial. And it should be with what's been going on in many trials. I see a lot of prosecutors today not after the truth, just for the win. Yeah, that can be a problem. I've seen that. Wrongful convictions do happen. Yes, I think less of them happen today because of DNA, because of video evidence, because of license plate readers, because of cell phones. I think all of that has led to a much more precise investigation in many cases. But there's always differences. But Jonesy, the innocent until proven guilty doesn't apply to the public, doesn't apply to the court of public opinion. We do not have to wait for a trial to happen to have opinions, right? We're not standing in judgment. And when I have opinions before a trial, my opinion is based upon any evidence that's been made public. And here, this evidence has been made public. If it's challenged and you provide evidence that, this was a frame job, or this was planted, or, somebody was drinking while they were testing the DNA, all right, I'll listen to you. But as we stand now, based upon what I'm hearing, I find it compelling, Jonesy.
Well, that was going to be my point, actually, is that innocent until proven guilty does indeed exist in the, eyes of the law in court, but in public, it seems to me quite the opposite. Most everybody I know has an opinion on these crimes that are so well publicized and such. And, I myself will often decide who did it. Like the first time I hear of a story, I'll see somebody on the news and they're the parent's victim or whatever the case may be, the victim's parents or whatever the case may be. And I'll immediately point to them and say, that one did it. That's just the nature of the way things are. But hopefully, they continue to exist in the courtrooms, innocent until proven guilty. I strongly believe in that, but I don't follow it.
William Tardy, you want to see how your DNA ends up somewhere you haven't been? Check out the Lucas Anderson case.
Okay. Well, if they find my DNA there, then I will check it out.
That is probably the best way to find a reasonable doubt, is to get your hands on someone else's DNA and leave it at the scene of wherever you're committing a crime.
Yeah. Well, you've seen that in a number
I've seen it on Law and Order.
And you've seen it in a number of movies, Scott Turow books and things along those lines. So that is something that is, conceivable, obviously.
Here's the problem with the defendant in the Idaho 4 case, and Johnny Knoxville is on it again. Thank you, Johnny. The suspect's stargazing alibi is shot. The weather was full of clouds and foggy the night of the Red Rums. So he's out stargazing, like he's driving around. His alibi is, I'm driving around aimlessly all night. Like, that's not an alibi. That's insane. An alibi is, I was home. I was with my girlfriend, which he didn't have. Whatever it was, I was doing something like normal and something where my phone maybe is on the whole time. My phone isn't turning on, turning off. I'm not driving around all night on this adrenaline rush. Like his so-called alibi doesn't really work. It's a generalized alibi, not a specific alibi. Where were you at 4 a.m.?
Well, you know what the answer is on that one? With this conspiracy theories that will be going out on this. I was told it was going to be a good night for stargazing, so that's why I was out, but I was misinformed.
Mm-hmm.
I was misinformed. I was told it was a good night for stargazing. I was misinformed. But these doubts and these conspiracies, all stem from basically the Watergate era forward. You have the situation with regards to, the Kennedy assassination going forward. And then you have what happened with Watergate, and that you don't trust government and you don't trust anything down those lines. And I am not a crook. And you go forward on that. And
framed job. I was framed.
That's why we've started all of these doubts. And, DNA has done a lot to save a lot of people. We see.
But Al, can I talk to you about those doubts? Those doubts come from lack of transparency.
I don't necessarily.
That's where show
the transparency doesn't matter. No one agrees that it's transparent anyway. Everything is opaque. Everything in the world now is opaque. No matter what you can say, the grass is green.
What is it, Area 51? Take me for a tour of Area 51. Come on.
Okay. All right.
Do it.
When do you want to go? When do you want to go?
Yes.
Tomorrow?
Let's go. We'll go live from Area 51. Suze, Vinnie, will you be covering the William Brock trial next month out of Clark County, Ohio? The man accused of Red Rum against the Uber driver that was sent to his house. I know we're tracking it, but if it's next month, might be in the middle of the Karen Reed trial, so might get pushed a little bit on the lower pecking order of things, but we'll keep an eye out for it. But I don't think it's going to be a headliner, Suze. I don't think it's going to be a headliner because the Karen Reed retrial is scheduled for April 1st is when it's supposed to start. So the other thing about Ohio that's bad about covering trials with cameras and microphones is that each witness can opt out. And depending upon how the judge handles that issue, some judges will ask each witness, do you want the cameras on or off? And most of the cop witnesses, they don't care, the professional witnesses, but the eyewitnesses and stuff, a lot of times will opt out. So when we try to cover trials in Ohio, it gets difficult because you don't get to see everything. And that's why we don't do a ton out of Ohio, but obviously we'll keep our eyes on it. Larissa is just on fire today. Thank you again. First tested sheath came up with 0. After handed to FBI, the sample doubles in size and FBI no methods to show. Probable cause is a dumpster fire. No evidence. I love that, dumpster fire. I covered a case with an actual dumpster fire, the disappearance of baby Lisa. Anyhow, strange pain saw sheath after CSI. But here's the problem with this frame, and I said it already, and I don't know if you disagree, Al, but it was the DNA that led them to the suspect. It wasn't like they had the suspect and grabbed his DNA and planted it.
Right.
Because they didn't know who he was. They just didn't know who he was.
The allegations they make about
he wasn't on the radar. April Diaz, thank you so much. We've got to. I need to give my love to my 3 favorite online guys and my fellow chatters who always make me smile. Have a great weekend. Have a great weekend. April Diaz. Guys, we are almost out of time.
What?
No, it flew. I'm just wondering how it's going to go at the end here. We get another one here. Spruced and Gussied, Vinny and panel, thanks for catching me up. I have been way too invested in this case and backed off last year for Lent, actually. Thanks again for the kind words on my username. It's my vintage business. Oh, wow. It's a vintage business. Jonesy, you would probably love going there. I'll have to check that out. All right. Thanks to our mods. It's an actual business, spruced and gussied. Thank you to Gen X, Frankie Figs, Ashley Bouchard, and Jennifer Soubey, our mod squad. Thank you to all the chatters. We had some technical glitches here. I don't know why. We'll try to figure it out for next time. Where can folks wait, I gotta fix this a little bit. Where can folks find you, Al?
Monday night, we're on Closing Arguments, Vinny and I, 8 to 9. Okay, you can also get me at Legal Weapon 3 on X. And if you write on YouTube, you'll see that I do respond, and will be making my comments and defending myself. But as I told you before, I've given up being aggravated for Lent. So be nice, be kind is going to be my slogan for today. And hasta la vista, Los Tangenistas.
Tangenistas. Jonesy, where can folks find the radio legend?
Well, I'll be at the Count Basie Theater on March 18th. Come see me there. I've got tickets to see Burton Cummings.
Oh, I thought you were performing.
You can also find me at glennjones.net.
glennjones.net. All right, folks, thank you so much. Thank you for all the super chats. People very, very generous today. We appreciate it. Keeps us going. I'm Vinnie Politan. You see me tonight, 8 o'clock on Court TV, Closing Arguments with Vinnie Politan. Then 9 o'clock, Vinnie Politan Investigates. A big thank you and hello to everyone who was watching on our simulcast on the Court TV YouTube stream. Thank you so much, folks on, of course, Facebook, on X, and on our own YouTube page, and on Twitch. Thank you all so much. I just got to cross my fingers that, because we've had so much problems with the music today, that the outro song and video makes its way onto the screen. We shall see.
If not, I will sing it for everyone.
It's a roll of the dice. Say good night, Jonesy.
Good night, Jonesy.